Hello and welcome. My name is Angie Mendez, and I'm the host of GMST podcast, where we do a weekly hour-long show for millennials, where we talk about different topics, but always with an emphasis on vulnerability, authenticity, and relatability. Each week has a different theme, but there are some recurring segments too. So make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss future episodes. So the following episode, it's a lot heavier than most subjects. It deals with things of a political and complicated nature, so if that's too much for you today, or just in general at all, I understand. I understand completely, and I don't mind at all if you need to skip this week's episode entirely, or if you need to take some time and watch it really slow. I don't mind at all. Whatever it is that you need to do for yourself, I support you and your mental health. So, I have one random personal thing that I just wanted to mention that I just have to genuinely say, I'm a little bit disappointed, underwhelmed with the amount of support that I get from the people that know me in my real life regarding this podcast. And don't get me wrong, it's not everybody. There's a few people in my real life that really are very supportive, and I appreciate you who are. But, it's not easy to get these podcasts to you at all. This isn't my house. I have to, work around a couple other people's schedules, and a lot of the time I'm meant to feel like I'm in everybody's way by doing this. So every view, everything, any support I get, I appreciate it so much because, I don't get enough in real life, okay? I get plenty on the internet, and I'm thankful for my internet friends. But shoot, gosh darn, okay? So I had to get that out of the way because that's weighing on my mind, and I really want to talk about that. But yeah, we have more important things to talk about today. So I only have one really quick recurring segment, and then we're going to get into the real topic, and it's really heavy. There's a lot. I don't know how long this is going to take. I did time myself reading it out, but I think I was rushing through, and it was kind of short. It was half episode, but I feel like this topic deserves a million episodes. But also the thing is too that I'm not really, GMST podcast is not inherently political, but we can get political if we need to. So the someone you should know. I would like you guys to know who Bassem Youssef is. He is an Egyptian comedian and TV host. He reminds me so freaking much of Robin Williams. He's that level funny, and he's just got such a light in his spirit. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say. So I'm now aware of him because he was on Piers Morgan. He had a stellar performance, and I'm going to keep him on my radar because he is just, I don't know, I love when people can combine two really different things, comedy and music, or comedy and politics, or, just making things more enjoyable in life, I think it takes such talent to do stuff like that. Okay, so we need to kind of shift the vibes. We are having a solemn vibe because the world is in chaos, and we are going to talk about the crisis in the Middle East today. And, I've been really quiet for a long time after this, October 7th thing happened. And the reason is because everything is so, volatile everywhere I look. Everybody's just out for blood, and I don't want to be associated with any group at all. You know what I mean? Because it just everything has such a crazy connotation, which doesn't deserve. So I'm going to talk about that. That's just a little teaser for you. So keep in mind that I'm not Israeli, and I'm not Palestinian, and I'm not even Arab. So I think maybe some people might be asking, what are your qualifications to talk about this issue? And I would love to answer your question. So I've had a special interest in the Middle East since 2001. That's the year when 9/11 happened, when I first became aware of the region from the media, and I questioned the media's intentions. I would always see a message of like supposed hate that is coming from the Middle East, towards us, towards Americans, toward the West or whatever. But the message was always delivered by like our own media and our own people. So I was naturally questioning it because I'm thinking, well, there's so much potential for this message to be lost in translation, or that it's like not even said at all. Like, I'm kind of questioning, I'm like, what did we do? Why do they hate us? Like, do they actually, So I had all these questions from like a very young age. That I was like 8 in 2001. So yeah, I've had this as like an interest for a long time. A curiosity is what like stemmed this. And I kind of wondered why other Americans like were not as curious as me. So my high school like started offering Arabic, I think when I was in 9th grade. No, I don't even know. I think they offered it in 10th grade, and then I think I started in 11th grade, so that would have been 2009. So that's when I started studying Arabic. So if you don't know how hard Arabic is, you might think that I'm like fluent or something in it, having studied it that long. But no, ma'am. Arabic, I think it's like a category 5 language, if I'm not wrong. That means like it's the hardest type of language to learn for an English speaker. And so I topped out at like intermediate mid. So the last Arabic class I remember taking was like taking Arabic and media. So like I could specifically have the tools to like watch the news. And that was like my 8-year-old dream. Like that's what I wanted all my life. To like be able to look at the news and be like, I can see what they're saying. I know what they're saying. I know if you're telling me a lie about what they're saying. So that's what I wanted, But since then, also keep in mind, it's been like 7 years since I graduated from university. So I'm so rusty. So I wish my Arabic was as good as it used to be. You know what I mean? So I was studying Arabic in 2009. That's when I started studying it in high school. And that teacher led me to the Middle East Studies program at the U of U. So I started going there in 2012. Got my degree in 2016. I'm going to show it to you guys because I've never had to show it to anybody, like for any reason. Like I've never used it. But this is the first time I'm using it. So that's, yep, I'm qualified. Okay? Can't say I'm not. There you go. So that was kind of cool. Fun degree reveal. Who else can do that in this random situation? So the Israeli-Palestinian crisis was a special point of interest for me. And what I initially wanted to center my career around, okay? So like when I hear everybody talk about this issue all the time, I'm like, I'm fighting back the words to like tell you you're crazy. So it's not that I'm right about everything. It's just that I'm not right about much, but I just have a really deep understanding of this, even if I'm rusty on it. I had to like re-research a lot, but okay, with the career thing, life had other plans for me. I did not start a career because I realized that my entire goal, wait for it, which was to reform U.S. policy toward the liberation of Palestinian people, was seemingly impossible. As one significant person up against millions of dollars of lobby money poured into our politicians, spiking our punch, and this is a halal luncheon, okay? So to explain this for people who may not realize, there are huge organizations that function to use enormous amounts of money donated towards politicians to influence their policy and to influence the way they vote in Congress, to determine how much money we send abroad. So I don't know about you, but as an American at home, things are worse here than ever economically. And knowing that we're just sending our money off to fund war and violence. It's really disgusting, don't you think? So, yeah. So those are my qualifications, but I would like to tell you my biases because you should have a fair chance whether you even want to listen to what I have to say or listen to, this like lesson or whatever that I'm teaching. So, my biases, okay? So I mentioned before that I've been studying Arabic, the Arab world, and by extension, the religion of Islam. And I at some point also became very close to and very protective of Muslims and also Arabs as a people, especially in the context of living in America, where people lean toward Islamophobic, like just naturally, not intentionally even, not even consciously. It's like ingrained in our culture to be Islamophobic, which it's like you have to like actively combat that because Islam is just as valid as any other religion. Like, I'm gonna tell you what. And I'm not religious, okay? So I'm American and I was socialized in the American school system. So the way that they first presented the crisis, this Middle Eastern crisis, to us ever in my life was in 9th grade geography. And it wasn't even mentioned, until proper high school. So when it finally was, we were given a day to watch West Bank Story, a goofball comedic musical parody of West Side Story, but with Tony and Maria being Israeli and Palestinian. And for those who don't know about West Side Story, it's like a Puerto Rican American adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. So it's like a very silly, unserious way to introduce a really serious topic to us. I didn't get to, again, revisit the conflict to really learn the history until a year or so into, like, my university, which was 5 years after that, to try to, like, deprogram, like, the very subliminal, pervasive hold that Israel invested into my brain, just by default, as, like, from the American culture. So, like I said, American culture inherently is Islamophobic, like, to its core. And I would say it's just as, like, Zionist, pro-Israel. And I did not put in my notes anything about Zionism or what Zionism is, but to briefly kind of explain it for people who don't know, because I know it's a term that gets thrown around a lot and it gets confused with, a lot of people just like weaponize this word toward each other when I don't know that I've ever met a real Zionist in my life. So Zionism is the concept of God promising a piece of land to you as like a religion. So, for example, we have the concept of Zion here in where I live in Utah, but it's like for the Mormons or whatever. So Utah is Zion for the Mormons. So this is like the land that God promised to the Mormons, supposedly. So this is the same concept as Zion being, in I don't know exactly where it is, but somewhere in Israel, and that land is promised by God to the Jews. Like, that's what Zionism as a concept is. So Zionist people would want, people to move to Israel because it was promised to them from God. That's the concept. That's the theory. So just wanted to explain what that was, that America, modern America, is inherently Zionist, in my opinion. So another bias of mine, to get back to the notes, sorry. I am Jewish. Surprise. By blood, not by religion. I already knew that I had Jewish blood, and my DNA test confirmed that for me. So please understand, when I speak about Israel, I'm referring to a nation state and its government. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm not talking about the citizens. I'm not talking about Jewish people anywhere in the world. I'm not speaking about civilians. I am using Israel to refer to the military industrial powers that be. They're within that nation. So if you feel, based on any of the info that I've shared with you, that you'd like to call me names or make judgments on my character, I ask that you would click off of this video and look inward at why your instinct asks you to do that. I've seen so many people make baseless accusations toward people, saying they're anti-Semitic, and I think if they mean anti-Jewish, they should take a moment to understand that the Arabs too are a Semitic people. As someone who has studied Arabic for so long, there are pieces of Hebrew that I understand. And if anyone cares to look far back enough, the Jews and Arabs were brothers. So a left field bias of mine that you might not expect is that my favorite podcast is hosted by two American Israeli citizens. So lately I've been hearing more of the Israeli experience, which I'm always open to hearing. I strongly believe instead of the 24-hour news cycle, we should be paying much more attention to the real experiences of real people and listen to their traumas and how we can work toward undoing the forces that traumatize these people. Okay, so the last bias of mine that I want to mention before you should decide to listen to me at all is that I've spent 6 weeks in the Middle East, in Jordan, staying with other students, and then my host family were Christian Arabs, so I got a very unique but enlightening experience. In my time in Jordan, I met so many Arabs, mostly Muslim, some Christian, and I've met so many more Arabs in the United States since then. And I can't emphasize enough that Arab people, to their core, are the warmest, most hospitable people that I've ever come across in my life. And this is from me, as agoraphobic as I tend to be. So it means that much more than the words themselves. Every single time. They've accepted me, this goofy white Mexican American girl, as one of their own, to such a greater extent than my own people ever would. And the intent here is not to put down any group of people ever, but just to explain my perspective of the beauty of Arab people and the love that they've shown me, and I'll always give them that love in return. And I'm protective over them. It's important to also note that Jordan has a very large number of Palestinian people that emigrated there over the last few generations. You know, some exiled, some refugee, seeking a safer life. And one of them, Zainab, was my favorite, Zainab was my favorite Arabic teacher from the Qasid school, and she's extremely dear to my heart. I forgot to put it in the notes too, but you have to also understand that this isn't not a black and white issue. There are Arab Jews. There are Israeli Arabs. There are people who are both. And imagine how torn they feel. And they're probably harassed from either side. Like, I know how it is. So while I have some degree of knowledge on like this topic as a whole, I have some ignorance too. I want to point out my ignorance as much as my biases, you know, just so you have equal understanding of where I'm at. So I don't speak Hebrew. I've never been to Israel. I've not spent that much time studying Judaism, so I haven't heard that side as much. The majority of voices about Israel that I hear are from American Jews, which is okay, but I want to hear more from actual Israeli citizens, like the ones who don't support the current regime there. And I know that there's so many more than what are shown on the media. So now I want to talk to you guys about how Israel was even like formed. So this is kind of halfway history lesson, halfway like just kind of reflecting on the politics and the context. Like it's like a meta look on what happened. So I'm going to talk about like some of the biggest conflicts between these groups and like kind of the process of the nation building, and just try to give you the perspective that I have. However, I'm only focusing kind of like on the biggest events. So, and for the sake of time, like I can't go into like the entire history. So there might be bits and pieces missing. So if you do feel like I glossed over something really significant, I welcome you to share in the comments with everybody so that we can all learn more together. You know, I want this to be like collaborative. Like I don't want this to just be like, here's my thing, like here's my perspective, and like just take it, just like share your perspective too, you know. But the one thing I will ask about any comments is like no name calling, no calls for violence. Like what? Like, I've seen so much of that lately. Like, normally I wouldn't even think to ask about that. But yeah, so let's get into the nation building. How was Israel created? Okay, so I'm going to be purposefully reductive here because I want this message to make sense to people that don't know a lot about the conflict, to give a meta level context to a very common theme in the Middle East. So modern nation building, aka colonialism, carved up the Middle East in really haphazard ways that continue to be problematic today. Britain and France put together what's called the Sykes-Picot Agreement in the early 20th century to dismember and split up the Ottoman Empire. So one of the biggest oversights of this agreement, in my opinion, was the oversight of the oneness of the Arab people. They superimposed arbitrary borders onto them and then took no responsibility for the century-long effects. Some huge glaring issues of this was the division of Arabs when there had been popular support for a pan-Arab nation, and other groups like the Druze and the Kurds had been divided, leaving them as new minorities of invented nations. This is not in my notes, but this kind of topic makes me wonder, like, which ethnic groups get a nation and which don't, and why is that? So the Sykes-Picot Agreement divided out land under different spheres of influence, and Palestine at this time of 1915 had been recommended to fall under an international regime because of its holy sites, which meant it was the only region uniquely protected by British, French, and Russian protection, and no nation had been yet. Oh my gosh, I wrote my notes really weird. No nation had yet been built there, despite that patch of land having belonged to countless different empires of all religions. So, at this point in history, who will end up over Palestine? What will happen to the people there who already call themselves Palestinian? Will their language, religion, and culture persevere? Will the diverse patchwork of people there continue to coexist, or will a major discrepancy tear people apart by blood, by religion, by your name, your parents' names, and your grandparents' names? So I didn't put it in the notes, but then I remembered kind of after the fact of the perspective of the Jewish emigration. So I remember, I discussed briefly what Zionism was. So the early Zionist people, like the very beginning ones at the end of the 19th century, they started to, emigrate to Palestine, and probably in the wake of like mistreatment of Jews around the world. So I just wanted to briefly mention that because I don't feel like it's like fair if I don't mention that. I'm not saying it's right that they are like, whatever, seizing land whatever way they did. I'm not saying that. Just giving context of like why there were Jews already headed there, not super long, but a while before Israel was created. Okay, so the Palestinians at the time, like 1915 is still where I'm talking, had expected independence in an autonomous state. Like a lot of states in the area were being given independence, and so the Palestinians also thought they were going to have an autonomous state too. So they had already kind of like formed like a national identity without the nation. That's why we have Palestinians. So there is the reason for the Palestinians expecting the autonomous state. It was correspondence between the British High Commissioner in Egypt and the Emir of Mecca. So the Emir of Mecca was basically speaking for all Arabs, where maybe he kind of like shouldn't have, because it didn't end up being the pan-Arab state anyway, and it was like a bait and switch kind of situation. So the British High Commissioner in Egypt wanted to use the Emir of Mecca to defeat the Ottoman, to deconstruct the Ottoman, and promised that Palestine would get a state if the Emir of Mecca was able to help Egypt defeat the Ottoman. Or the British, the British to defeat the Ottoman. So it really was giving bait and switch, and it was just a lie. It was basically kind of a lie. It was like, if you help me do this, I'm going to give you this. They didn't get that. So, yeah. It was like the British used the Arabs against each other to, like, then give their brothers' land away. That's, like, the way that I'm seeing it. Correct me if you see it differently. So, after they were not given the state, they had it, like, it was, like, in the palm of their hand. It was in the palm of their hand. And then the Balfour Declaration was, like, how do I explain it? It was kind of like a public opinion, like, declaration to try to gain more support for Zionism, to take Palestine and instead of making it an Arab state, to make it a national home of the Jewish people. So there was, like, a huge amount of support in Britain amongst really powerful Zionist Jews, and they all banded together with this declaration to, use Palestine instead for the Jewish home. So the declaration, it said, nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So this should have protected the Palestinians, but it didn't protect them because there was no mention of which groups are protected or, like, what are their rights? Can they vote? Like, so that was, like, the moment where all the rights were kind of taken, okay? So the Balfour Declaration, like I said, that was in Britain to gain, like, Zionist and common Jewish support. It was endorsed by World War I's allied powers. I'm really tongue-tied right now. So they ended up including this Balfour Declaration in the British Mandate over Palestine, formally approved by the newly created League of Nations in 1922. So in this time in 1922, there's still the people who, born generations in Palestine. There's this group of people still there. There's an increasing number of, I don't want to call them, I was going to call them refugees, but, like, are they refugees at this time? Maybe they are. Some of them probably are. So then you have, like, this influx of, like, Jews from all over the world, supported by Britain, to come to Palestine. So you're getting, like, this demographic tension there. It's building. So in 1939, we're skipping ahead a little, the British government put out the White Paper, which was a policy paper that recommended a limit of 75,000 further immigrants, Jewish immigrants, and an end to immigration to Palestine by 1944, unless the resident Palestinian Arabs of the region consented to further immigration. So Britain's like, okay, we kind of screwed up. We promised this to Palestine, and now we also kind of, like, let everybody kind of think it's for Israel too. And now, like, what do? We need to kind of control this. We can see this is, like, going to get out of hand if we don't do something. So we're going to, like, try to slow down immigration. So this white paper, it introduced the immigration quotas, the restrictions on settlement and land sales to Jews. Kind of, like, sounds kind of weird, but, like, foreshadowing, and constitutional measures that would lead to a single state under Arab majority rule with provisions to protect the rights of the Jewish minority. So this 1939 white paper, this is the only moment of clarity that I see from the Brits, that they're like, okay, we really screwed this up for Palestine, and now we've completely changed the nature of Palestine, and we need to actually protect this Freudian slip, protect this Arab state. Okay? So for time's sake, I have to skip over so much that, like, happens during this time, during the war times, World War I, World War II. I think we all kind of know what happened in World War II, with, like, Hitler and the Holocaust, and suddenly, like, a flip switched, and Jews everywhere around the world were, like, not safe anymore. So Great Britain decided to relinquish its mandate and hand over the Palestine problem, created over 3 decades by the Balfour Declaration and the Palestine Mandate, to the United Nations. So this happened before the World War II. And so in the hands of the United Nations, it just, like holding water in your cupped hands. Palestine was given away. So with the World War II and the Holocaust, like, there was nobody left in the world that was like, oh, we're going to keep Jews from immigrating to Palestine. It was more that, like, okay, this is your national home now. Everybody go. So, now that Israel in 1948 is formed, and also try to think of it in also the context of, like, your generations of your family. Like, my grandma, she's passed away, but she was born in 1944. So imagine this state, she's older than the state of Israel, you know? Like, think about that. That's kind of crazy. Like, where were your grandparents when Israel was formed? So, since Israel was formed in 1948, there were very many crises, conflicts, and violence that happened, and just general atrocities that happened in that region after the formation of Israel. And before I get into what they were, just take a moment to kind of absorb how Israel was built. And kind of look at what the people are asking for, you know? Because, like, if you, I don't know, it's kind of like, I can't make a very good analogy for it. I can't make one. I can't think of one. I was gonna try to think of, like, oh, if your country that's, like, so right next to this other country, they got independence and you don't, and now you're, like, a subjugated people, and always, like, it, like, guaranteed that you're not, like, living in peace for the foreseeable future, you know? Like, it's devastating. Like, I mean, on both sides, it's devastating to have to flee just based on your religion alone, that you're becoming a target just based on your religion at all, and that you have to go to now a place where people already are there and they don't want you there when you were already exiled from your home. And then on the Palestinian side, to just, you know, hope that you're gonna have a nation just like everybody else and then have it taken from you. So if you ever wonder why the other side is angry, this is why, you know? It's kind of weird. One thing I do also want to say, I might have put it in my notes, I really don't remember, but just one thing I kind of didn't understand about how we dealt with the Holocaust, like, as America, because, like, I don't know, Jews are such an important part of America, and we, you know, like, we take a priority in protecting them, so I didn't understand why we would, like, send them away to all be together, like, in a unsafe place. Because, like, think of it this way, when in the Holocaust, when they were put in concentration camps, they were called concentration camps because they were highly concentrated there. So I'm thinking, why are we also sending them to a highly concentrated country surrounded by, like, opposing people? Like, if we're meant to protect the Jews, why do we not keep them in our own communities? That didn't make any sense to me, you know? Like, why do we send them to a nation so far from where they originate? I don't know. And, you know, that's not my journey. I just have these questions. You know? Because, like, I just try to think logically about it. And I'm, like, asking logically, like, why do we keep them in an unsafe place? Why don't we protect them, right? And it's the same with everybody. So the crises that happened after Israel was created, the very first one, some sides call it Israeli-Arab War, some call it the Nakba. So this was, like, most comparable to, like, the Trail of Tears in America. So a colonizing group is, like, driving out like mass scale driving out the indigenous people of the area. So it's a large scale displacement of the Palestinians. And in this Nakba, so many families still have the keys and the deeds to their homes that were taken. They still physically have them. It's crazy. So, after this war, Egypt had controlled the Gaza Strip and Jordan controlled the West Bank until 1967. And then we get to the 6-Day War. So after 6 days of war, Israel captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the Sinai. It's crazy. And the Golan Heights in the north. So, very expansionist. Like, America was the blueprint for Israel, okay? So just, think of it that way and give Israeli people as much compassion as you would a normal American. You know, we have the blood of slavery and, racism on our hands too. But you don't remind us every day just because, whatever, you saw our flag or something. So I just feel like people need to, treat each other with more respect, I feel like, because this history's all ugly and we all have blood on our hands. So, So after Israel got all these territories back, this starts the period of the uprisings. So they use the word intifada. I don't know if I'm not saying it right. I haven't read it in Arabic, so I don't know how to say it. But intifada, that is like an uprising. So there were 3 of them, I believe. So the first one is the first Palestinian uprising. This was in 1987, ended in 1993, when Israel's then Prime Minister I can't say his name right, Yitzhak Rabin, and then leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat, they signed the Oslo Accords. So they signed it for the Palestinian people and Israel's right to exist in peace. Rabin was assassinated in 1995, wiping the slate clean for peace. From my personal studies, and maybe there's a point where you can see peace closer, in closer proximity than this, but from what I remember, the Oslo Accords was honestly the closest that we've got this whole time toward any semblance of peace. And Yitzhak Rabin, he was a very remarkable, more progressive type of Israeli leader, which I don't think they've had one since him, at all, as far as I know. Their politics and the government in Israel is so, far right and just, batshit crazy. We would never, and even politics is horrible in America, but we would never put somebody into office like Netanyahu, okay? And I think that most people in Israel don't support him. So, yeah, it's nuts. So, the second intifada was 2000 to 2005, and that led to the Palestinian people's autonomous control of Gaza. So, I think the Israelis always talk about how in 2005 they all got out of Gaza and they never came back. So Gaza is just Palestinian, but in 2006, Hamas, which is how do I explain Hamas? So it's a terrorist organization, but it's also a party, a political party, I guess. So they were running for election and they won over the PLO, and there was an armed takeover the next year. And so I feel like it's so key to distinguish for people who don't really know much about this, that the PLO is a normal governmental party of Palestine, not a terrorist group, okay? Just a normal government party that, in my opinion, has Palestine's best interest in mind, unless you can let me know of a party that has better interest. So the PLO got overthrown by the terrorist group Hamas, which are violent, as we know, and have ties to other terrorist organizations. And the thing that I freaking hate about Hamas so much, okay, is that they're setting back the liberation of the Palestinian movement like so freaking much. They've got the whole world thinking that Palestinians are like terrorists when they're just not. They're good people. It makes me so mad. Okay? So the Israelis responded to the Second Intifada with a blockade of Gaza, which affects the movement of the people, the aid they receive, and every facet of their lives. And that was the response to Hamas taking over Gaza. So there's occasionally you'll have like a third party come and investigate what the fuck's happening in there. So the European Commission, they investigated on the nature of the blockade because, it kind of sounds inherently inhumane. They found Gazans were systematically denied adequate housing, access to services, while subjected to enforced evictions and movement restrictions. So they're like put in a vice grip, okay? It's crazy that the world just watches this happen. They don't do anything, and they give them money to make it happen. It's so mad. So, in more recent years, Israel engaged in major large-scale military operations, including the 22-day-long 2008 Operation Cast Lead, the 2012 Pillar of Defense 8-day operation, and the Protective Edge operation in 2014. So, to kind of talk about how Israel's military works, they have the fourth strongest military in the world, only after Russia, the US, and China. And we, as the US, have given them more than $150 billion of direct government aid to date. Israel's security has a reputation of being so tight that it's easily discriminatory, profiling, and racist, and their airport is known to give additional screening to Arabs or perceived Arab sympathizers. So other examples of the apartheid nature of Israel can be seen through the checkpoint system, where every step of movement is monitored for Palestinians in the West Bank, whereas Israeli settlers have access to their own road systems where they have freedom of movement. And what's especially heinous is there being settlers in the West Bank at all, as it's a violation of international law that nobody's willing to enforce. And the violence that these settlers commit against the Palestinians here goes unchecked, condoned, and protected by the Israeli government. They allow this ethnic cleansing, call it what it is, because they know that naturally the two demographics have a different birth rate, and Arabs demographically would be a larger group. So they systematically exterminate them, deprive them of their humanity, and spoon-feed us lies about it all. So, let's talk about the October 7th attack. So, and that's kind of why we're talking about this anyway, because this more recent attack happened. Typically, I feel like I wouldn't really put myself on this podium to talk about this conflict, but because it's so fresh and it's just really different than anything's happened. We all are talking about this now, So if anyone is still unaware, which is slightly surprising to me because of how much nonstop coverage there has been on this, Hamas was able to mobilize an attack using bulldozers, hang gliders, and motorbikes that fell on a music festival in Kibbutz near Oz. For those who don't know, it's important to make sure everyone understands what a kibbutz actually is. So it's essentially a commune. It's centered around collectivism and agriculture so that people can live non-competitively. So the civilians that were harmed in this attack most likely supported the liberation of Palestine, and they were not opposed to them, which is sickening and heartbreaking. And these like many victims of this crisis have been so mischaracterized. This attack had 1,400 deaths and nearly 5,000 injured. And as much as I have a vision for Palestinians living free, I'm so disturbed and hurt by how far this attack has set Palestinians back. It has obscured the world's vision. Now the innocent of Gaza are facing the punishment. They have to leave. They have nowhere to go. They have nothing. And Jordan and Egypt, the neighbors who have made peace agreements with Israel in the past, they have refused to take Palestinian refugees after this crisis because they know that the refugees will not ever be able to return to their homes. And therefore they say they don't want to be complicit. And it's all just an excuse. They're already inundated with refugees from different places, and they don't want to jeopardize their agreements with Israel. So, yeah. So that's all I have on the nation building and what's happened since the formation of Israel in that region. The violence and the conflict. So, some takeaways that I would like to talk about. Most of all, working towards peace, empathy, listening more than talking, respecting the movements you're supporting. If you're a representative of a movement that you respect, you'll conduct yourself with poise, you will stay composed when challenged, and you will recognize who is open-minded and who is not. You won't waste any energy on anyone who isn't. The last thing you want to do is leave a bad taste in people's mouth when you're trying to recruit their support or taint the perception of someone that was once indifferent. I had someone ask me to help them understand the crisis, and I was so happy they were asking these questions, and I was really happy to help them understand, because it's really easy to get caught up in groupthink and the echo chamber, but sometimes you have to take a step back. Oh, I have show and tell. I have to show you guys something. I showed you guys my degree, and then I have a little, I don't know what to call it, and I don't know how to put it either. I'm not sure how it goes. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys my hamsa. I don't know if you guys know what a hamsa is. I don't know if I'm holding it the right way. Does it go this way or does it go this way? I don't really know. But this was given to me by my late Uncle Albert, whose best friend was Israeli, and he would travel to see her when he could in his younger years. He knew how passionate I was about the region, the conflict. He gave me this because it was made in Jerusalem, but it has also a Hebrew inscription. So I don't know Hebrew. I don't know what it says. I don't know if it's upside down. So let me know if you know what it says. But it's an amulet for protection from God. And this is something used both in Islam and Judaism, maybe Christianity even too, I don't know. I just wanted to share this with you guys as a literal symbol of a shared culture that can coexist. And it's so much more similar than different, like the media and the war machine wants us to think. So I want to caution anyone who claims they're for peace not to call for, gloss over, or celebrate the death of anyone involved in this ongoing generations-long crisis. It's really important. I'm going to say it again because it's really fucking important. I want to caution anyone who claims they are for peace not to call for, gloss over, or celebrate the death of anyone involved in this ongoing generations-long crisis. It is a disservice to anyone that lost their lives, and a disservice to current and future generations seeking the liberated Palestine that they deserve. So, I don't see complete reparations possible under a two-state solution and not a one-state. People need to systematically have housing, food, employment, citizenship, and freedom of movement restored to them to the same degree that Israelis have always been afforded. They need to be given a fighting chance. Conscription and the structure and the dominance of the IDF needs to change in Israel. And we should leverage this demand with our politicians in the United States. I can visualize a nation where Palestinians are free. So that's mostly all I have. I have one link that you can click on down in the box below. This is tiltify.com/@Hassanabi/Palestinian medical assistance. So you can donate there. There's a fundraiser in lieu of throne and stuff. We want to do Tiltify this week, and I'm probably gonna keep the Tiltify link in all the future episodes, just like because like they're always gonna need a donation. Doesn't matter. It's not like just a week-long thing. Clearly it's like a century-long thing. So that's all I've got. Okay, that was a hard episode. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry I didn't have like good eye contact. I just needed to like read my notes. So alrighty, you've just watched episode 12 of the GMST podcast, and I appreciate you so much. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Make sure to share this, especially this episode. This needs a share, okay? Share if you care. If you care about Palestine, I think you'll spread this message. So, we upload every Monday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time. My TikTok name is Cricket Just for Luck, and my personal Instagram and threads are Cricket Just for Luck. Lastly, I have a vlog channel on here called Whereas World. That is GUERAS World. Thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful Monday and a restorative week. I love you.